Who loves you, eh? That's right, Mummy loves you, you little monsters. Mummy loves you more than anything. More than all the cakes, more than all the jewellery, more than all the chocolate in the world.
This tremendous power to terrify was the Kray twins' greatest weapon.
Ronnie just had to glare at some people when they'd shit themselves. That was one of his favourite tricks. He would sit in a pub or a pub where we were, and people would be brought in for various reasons, and he could just sit there and stare at this person for half an hour, and that person he hasn't said a word to him, and that person's gone away and thoroughly cowed, you know, been told off without a word. That was how much fear that he generated.
There's lots of people walking around in the East End of London that's been hit on the chin by Reggie. But I wouldn't say that about Ronnie. It'd be a different kettle of fish with Ronnie, because Ronnie wouldn't be happy with just hitting you on the chin. He'd look for you until he found you and he would hurt you. Simple as that. You would fear Ronnie. There's no two ways about it. If Reggie sent for you and wanted to see you in Valence Road, you'd go round and see him, you'd have a cup of tea with him and you'd walk out. If Ronnie sent for you, you'd take 6 pairs of pants with you. That's the difference between the two of them.
He was feared, and anybody that said they wasn't frightened of him is telling lies. You know, I mean, I've heard loads of rubbish in the papers and seen all the rest of it. And I tell you what, if the man was alive today, they would be shitting themselves.
Reg, all his life, had this thing that he had to look after this sick, unstable, identical twin brother, and he did look after him. The only trouble was the unstable, mentally sick twin was the dominant. If Ronnie hadn't been quite so balmy and hadn't killed George Cornell because he was supposed to call him the fat poof, they'd been stone rich geezers. They were in most of the frauds in the East End, a lot of protection, a lot of rackets. They really, really didn't need to kill people. But once that killing had happened, then that increased their terror ratio enormously, you see, particularly with Ronnie. Francis Bacon, incidentally, who also knew him, said he had the most frightening face he'd ever seen, which I think from Francis Bacon is quite something. He was a paranoid schizophrenic and he was mad. But he was fascinated by this whole illusory world of gangsterdom. For Ronnie, I think the barriers between real crime and film crime were very blurred, and I think he often stepped over it.
I've been in pubs in the East End, and the Krays would come in, and the pub had empty. People were so afraid of them.
I was with them the night before they were arrested by chance. You know, I was in a pub with them in the East End, and Reg was in a state. He knew that they were going to be arrested very soon. He was drinking a hell of a lot at the time. He was in a state, and he did suddenly say to me, "I want to get away. I want to get out of this." And I kid you not, I said, "One place you really could go to is East Timor." There was no extradition treaty, and it would have been very interesting for him, and it was way away. And he seemed very taken with the idea of East Timor at the time. But then he said, oh, but I couldn't do it. He said, I couldn't leave Ron.
When I looked at Ronnie and Reggie, I could tell immediately, always, they had this violence in them. If necessary. They definitely had it, and in abundance.
They were dangerous people, and they weren't the kind of people that you'd mess around with.
If you messed around with them, then you was going to get it. They had that aura about them, and they were powerful, yeah, there's no doubt about it.
If they hurt people, they like people to be around them and see it. And this was putting fear into people in the East End.
And if you saw them two walk into a nightclub, suited and booted, respectable, they'd just sit down quietly, look around, and they had that look about them, you know what I mean, that nobody would mess around.
Well, I think one knew it was going to come. There was no other sentence, I suppose, possible at the time. They've been typecast now as criminal celebrities, as celebrity villains, and the picture people have of them is really the picture that came over in that film of them called The Krays. And also, you know, all the sort of gangster reminiscences which have come out of them, which really carry one's knowledge of them no further. Of course, they were gangsters, they committed murder and all the rest of it, but behind it all, I think there was the most terrible, sad story, which is of these two identical twins, and one of them was abnormal. He'd been damaged mentally as a child by getting, as far as I can make out, a combination of measles and diphtheria together. Ronnie wasn't normal. Reg was.
Exactly 1 year after the murder of Jack the Hat, the Kray twins were arrested after a night out at the Astor Club. Armed police broke down the door of the council flat where they still lived with their mum. A total of 26 people were arrested as the police rounded up the firm. They had believed they were untouchable, but their power depended on fear, and now there was no one left to enforce it. One by one, witnesses came forward to testify against the Krays. Ronnie boasted that if he hadn't been in court, he'd probably have been with Judy Garland. But his days of mingling with celebrities were over. For murdering Cornell and McVitie, the twins got life with a 30-year recommendation.
It was a reflection of what the judge felt was the right penalty for the crimes that they committed. I think he saw them for what they were, as arrogant, dictatorial leaders of a gang that had warped the society of the East End, committed brazen and quite gratuitous murders without regard to the lives and the considerations of other people, and they terrorised the whole of an area of London.
The sentences for the 10 members of the firm totalled 159 years.